being there. You can't beat being at football.
This is the English Premier League, and therefore it would be a sad day if we didn't have any English players playing in it.
British Premiership football has a potential worldwide audience of 410 million TV homes.
We're not supporters anymore, but we are fans. You never stop being a West Ham fan.
For the past 100 years, West Ham United Football Club has been a religion for its supporters in the East End of London. It is a club built on tradition, firmly rooted within the local community. But like all other English Premier League clubs, West Ham is undergoing a period of dramatic change that will allow it to benefit from the huge commercial success of the English game, but change which threatens to alienate some of its most loyal supporters. The 1990s saw English football transform from a national embarrassment to the most commercially successful football industry in the world, now valued at over £2 billion. West Ham United have a turnover of less than £40 million. This compares to between 60 and 120 million for clubs like Arsenal, Newcastle and Manchester United. Keeping the club in the Premier League has become as much a battle off the pitch as on it. Sue Page is West Ham's commercial manager. She is responsible for liaising with club sponsors and overseeing hospitality in the club's corporate suites. This is a difficult job, as many of the suites are still within the confines of a main stand dating from the 1960s.
Well, then what I suggest we do in future, when we do this, if we do 2, so if it's a table of 6.
As with most matches at West Ham's Upton Park Stadium, the visit of Liverpool will attract a full house of 26,000. 2 hours before kick-off, it is hard to see how a typical match day at West Ham has changed over the past 40 years. But it has changed. English football has begun to realise its full commercial potential, and West Ham are determined not to be left behind.
Okay, if we can have you all looking this way, nice big smile from everybody.
When I first started here, we had 1 matchday sponsors lounge, 2 executive lounges, and that was it. No boxes, no 66 club, no academy. I think, to be fair, everyone who comes here has got an affinity with the club. You know, you'll get someone's guests coming, but they may support the opposing team, but by the time they leave us, they've all got a little affection for us, and they'll ring us up and come back on their own steam, which is, you know, is what we're looking for.
West Ham retain the services of ex-players, such as England 1966 World Cup hero Geoff Hurst and ex-club captain Alvin Martin, who are employed as hosts.
You got your glasses on? How much do you reckon?
How much was the programme in 1964? £2 bob.
£2 bob? At least you got the old money right. Fourpence it was.
Oh, was it?
Fourpence. £2 bob. That was what I was worth when I played here, £2 bob. It's not just the game they come for a good day out, and Sue obviously puts a lot of effort into that as well, so it's, whatever happens in the game, you know, they've had a bit of entertainment and they've come in, they've made friends. I think that's what it is, it's a club in it, within the club.
Although West Ham have never won a championship title, their football heritage is second to none. England's World Cup winning captain Bobby Moore spent his career here, and when current first-team manager Harry Redknapp arrives before a match, he walks the same corridors he did as a player in the club's 1960s golden age. This continuity is mirrored by thousands of long-standing supporters.
I'd like to introduce you to my older brother, my nephew, my son, my oldest son, a friend of the family, and Russell, my youngest son, over there. I've been coming over, I don't know, about 30 years, and the boys have been coming 20-odd years or more.
Longer than that. I've been coming 32 years.
32 years.
No, that's me, so you must have been longer.
I must have missed 2 games or 2 seasons. I was asleep at the time.
The squad would have been announced like yesterday afternoon. after training.
Matchday stadium tours are another way that the club bonds with its supporters.
Frank and Harry will announce the starting lineup and the 5 substitutes, and then obviously there's going to be 1 or 2 players that are going to be a little bit disappointed at not being involved in today's proceedings.
The image is of a successful club, and it is true that for the Liverpool match, West Ham could have sold their corporate packages many times over, even if some fans find them a little expensive.
There was nothing.
Emery, you've got to put me into this negotiation. It's no good because once I'm into this negotiation, the price will go down, I promise you.
But West Ham know that they are missing out on much-needed revenue due to their lack of corporate facilities. At most British clubs, in financial terms, 1 corporate spectator is worth 10 ordinary fans. West Ham need a major stadium redevelopment if they are to fulfil their desire to be a top 6 Premiership club. It's 15 minutes before kick-off, and Sue Page leads the club sponsor onto the pitch to present a trophy to the Players of the Month.
To be fair, I mean, what's it now, 2:45? This should have been all over by 5:20 and going off to do something else. Now we'll just about get this in, ready to get upstairs as the game kicks off.
Get a bit paid.
The joys of football, that's good.
October's Player of the Month is Italian Paolo Di Canio. He's the kind of brilliant but temperamental player who keeps the more uncommitted fans interested in the game, even though some doubt whether West Ham fans think of anything else.
If they win, they talk about football, and if they lose, they talk about football. You know, it's like golfers. I mean, if you know, they spend 4 hours after the round talking about every single hole.
The obsession with football extends to staff at the club, although for them, watching the match can be difficult.
I miss so much of it. The only time I really see bits and pieces is when I come up into a lounge to sort the 50-50 draw out, and then at second half I often sit down, have a cup of coffee and I catch up on what's happened.
Matchday hosts like Jeff Hurst, though, do get to watch the match on closed-circuit TV. Fans here are watching a goal with the only man to have scored a hat-trick in a World Cup final.
Didn't seem as long as that. It's 5 minutes over now already.
There's only one big player.
This is the new football experience. Passion and entertainment, corporate hospitality, and modern all-seater stadia. West Ham have always been committed to entertainment. Even a 1-0 victory against Liverpool fails to please the manager if the team didn't play well.
How does the performance today compare with the way you have been playing in those runs?
It was 3 good points, but I like to go away and enjoy the game, and you know, I couldn't say that it was a classic. It wasn't a typical West Ham game for me today. Not what the people normally see here, and not what we normally serve up most Saturdays.
A successful team, capacity crowds, plans for further stadium redevelopment. West Ham's future, like that of most Premier League clubs, looks bright, but there is dissent. Mark Williams is editor of the supporters magazine, or fanzine, entitled On the Terraces. In the past, clubs have been suspicious of the fanzines.
I went to West Ham and I spoke to the guy who was the commercial manager there at the time, and he was basically very, very dismissive of the fanzine. In fact, one of his only sort of real noteworthy comments that I can remember was that I could print exactly what I wanted to, but if the club felt that I overstepped the mark, then they would have no qualms about taking me to court to sue me for libel or anything like that, which I thought was a bit extreme. But after a few years of doing the fanzine, and they could see that I wasn't there specifically to slag off the club or criticise them or denigrate them all the time, I think they saw that there was a usefulness, the club saw that there was a usefulness of having a positive relationship with the fanzines. I think they felt that we would be kind of duped into kind of not submission, but you know, being almost like another sort of independent front organisation for putting out the things that the club wanted us to say.
The fans' belief that they have a right to a say in West Ham's decision-making goes all the way back to the club's origins as a works football team.
Last century, just 2 miles down the road from this ground, there was a firm of boat builders building the largest ships in the world at the time. That was called the Thames Arm Works. My great-grandfather worked in the Thames Arm Works, and in 1895, the boss of the Thames Arm Works, Arnold Hills, asked my great-grandfather to form a works football team. It must have been a very successful works team, because within 5 years, 1900, they'd broken away, they became a professional club, and that's when West Ham United formed its name. My director colleague, Charles Warner, his great-grandfather was that boss of the Thames Arm Work, Arnold Hills. So 104 years on, we're very proud that there's two members of our board who can go back 104 years with their very direct connection with the football club.
That scarf my dad bought me just after the first match I come to, in 1932 that was. I never missed an home game, and my eldest boy, I used to have when he was 2. How old are you now?
Don't ask. 53.
53. Well, I used to have him on my shoulders up the North Bank, and before he was born, his name was down to support West Ham. Yeah, all the family. It's a religion with my family.
The game's place in the social fabric of England and its commercial transformation are now of worldwide interest. Liverpool University even offer a business course in the subject.
The Football Research Unit at the University of Liverpool primarily delivers a master's degree in business administration, which is focused upon the football industry. It's the first degree of its kind, as far as we know, in the world. You have to imagine England in the late 19th century. This is a game which was a folk tradition preserved in the public schools of England. And it was public schoolboys who eventually met each other at Cambridge or Oxford, wanted to play a football match, and they all played separate versions, so they had to write common rules. So the game of association football was midwifed by the aristocracy of England, and it was mugged by the working class within 15 years of the rules being written.
But it is the modern-day successors of those who mugged the game who now feel excluded. The Green Street Cafe, opposite West Ham's ground, is a meeting place for some of these men, now in their 30s and 40s, who stood by English football during its most troubled years, and who now feel betrayed. The irony is that they probably love the game more than anyone else.
The odd exception that's come through the ranks and who's been a class player like Joe Cole, but they come along once every blue moon.
I must admit that there are times now when I just try and forget about everything else apart from watching the team kick the ball around, you know, on a Tuesday evening or a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon on the few occasions that we get to see West Ham playing on a Saturday afternoon. And that's kind of sad, if you like, because, you know, really before I felt that there was a connection that I had with my club that I really didn't feel would ever be broken.
The only thing loyal to football is its supporters.
Yeah.
Everyone else is in it for their fast buck.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're in a society of take the money and run. And as I say, I've not been able to afford season tickets this year, and West Ham United, along with every other football club, have supporters like myself. They know there's another mug to take my place.
Do you think 14, 15-year-olds will sit down and have the same conversation, or would they be sitting there saying it's great crack over here? Is it us getting old? I mean, you do have to bear in mind how much of this is us being sort of like alienated.
But that's
intentionally alienated, I'd add. I mean, I think that they don't want to stay no more. They just do not want to stay.
Is taking the likes of some of us for granted, because there are so many diversions for their future children to go into other than football. As I say, one day it will shoot itself right in the foot.
Physically, the game has been reshaped and remodelled by the Hillsborough tragedy and the government's requirement that all seating be introduced, which meant the reconstruction of our grounds, public money and private money, something like £600 or £700 million sterling invested over the last 8 or 9 years into reconstructing the game physically. And then the competition, the invention of the Premier League, the restructuring of the European Cup into the Champions League, these are all television-led events. And there is a new audience for which football is mediated solely by television, an event which they only experience through the screen. The spreading of fandom of the great clubs like Manchester United and Liverpool and so on is via television. That's why they have world audiences and world fandom.
If it wasn't for fans going through the turnstiles, there would be no football club. So I think the club have to recognise that as well. Most clubs, and especially West Ham, learnt to their cost that to ignore what the fans were saying was completely wrong of them, and that maybe if they listened a bit more to what the fans were saying, it would help the club as well, help their understanding with the supporters, and help the supporters maybe trust the club a lot more than they have done in the past.
But football clubs now have other people they have to listen to. Commercial sponsors, for example. It's ironic that West Ham shirt sponsors Dr. Martens had an image closely associated with the violent bootboy culture of the 1970s.
Dr. Martens has been involved with football for a number of years. The brand has been around for 40 years. And in the early days, there was a link with football fans, albeit sometimes for the wrong reasons. We're finding on a global level that because English and British football travels well, I mean, someone quoted some statistics that British Premiership football has a potential worldwide audience of 410 million TV homes. Now, if we're involved with a Premiership club, then our brand is being seen in China, in Japan, in Germany, all over the world where we sell. Everyone, football clubs, television companies, fans, sponsors, etc., need to realise that if you just plough your own lonely furrow, then you might have some benefits in the short term, but in the long term, the whole game could lose out, and then we're all back to square one.
West Ham know just how important off-the-field commercial activities are for the future prosperity of the club. A wide variety of goods sold at the shop and the hectic activity in the build-up to a match bear testament to this. Their relationship with sponsor Dr. Martens is a core part of their marketing strategy. The partnership is a classic example of an outside business and a football club being right for each other.
West Ham is very much a family club, and Dr. Martens is made by a family firm. And so one of the things that we liked when the sponsorship was first agreed was the fact that here you had two family organisations getting together. I firmly believe that a sponsorship will only work if we work at it. And so we formed excellent relationships with people from the chairman through the directors, officials, etc., all the staff there, players. And it's for us to decide how far we want the sponsorship to go. We had to wait for some shirts to come down from Fila, because although they gave me the material...
Oh, right. It takes so much material, though, doesn't it, to make these?
But they actually needed the shirts because for some reason the fact that the Dr. Martens name is on the shirts, the perimeter boards, that it's in the programme and so on, you're getting the message across that we're here, we're sponsoring the club, and hopefully over the seasons we'll get across to West Ham fans that, you know, we're a sponsor that takes the sponsorship seriously, that wants to do more for the club, that perhaps can do something for the fans.
I honestly feel that there will be either a European league based around the company's sponsors, much rather than locations. You know, you've got someone like Manchester United. They'll probably still be based in Manchester, but I just have this feeling that, you know, it'll be Manchester Murdoch, you know. It's been happening with shirts now being sponsored, and you know, the great Barcelona in Spain deliberately don't have sponsors for their shirts because they feel it's sullying, you know, the great notion of Barcelona Football Club.
Why are they all named after places? It's easy to miss, isn't it? They're not named after people. They're not named after businesses. They're not named after anything but where they're from. And so place, blood and game are tied together. Football currently addresses a much wider audience as the game has moved itself upmarket. But some of those people who supported the game through all the bad times are now finding themselves excluded by price or by other effects. This is not just about being there. It's about the social relationships that run round it. It's about the supporters club beforehand or the pub. It's about being able to speak with authority on Monday morning because you were there. It's about a whole social matrix which plugs you in and allows you to have a life.
Del Francois and his family are some of those fans hit hardest by football's commercial revolution.
I've been going for 30 odd years. Lynn, you've been going how long?
I'm longer than you, aren't I, really? Because
Yeah.
I started going when I was 10.
And Lauren's been going ever since she was 3. And now, really, we've had to call it a day because we've been totally priced out of football. The day out was a day out. We used to go out as a family. If we're going out as a family or not at all. Now our daughter doesn't go. We don't see so much of Lauren because she
She's always
goes out
about.
and we're always stuck in. Even when we stopped going to the away games, like a couple of years ago.
We stopped that first.
We stopped that first, going to the away games, and then, as I say, now we just don't go out at all because we don't go to football.
And when the prices go up and you've got to get 3, ours was something like £1,500 for 3 season tickets, and everyone used to say at work, oh, you could go on holiday for that. And we said, no, well, we go to football every week or every Saturday, don't we? That's what we used to enjoy doing.
We used to see that our spending of 1,500 quid last us for 9 months of the football season, whereas people could spend that on a holiday, and I used to say to them, yeah, but that's only for a fortnight.
I think that football needs to take very seriously this part of a community of people, what we used to call ordinary working class people, for want of a better phrase, who have supported this game through some of the worst times it's seen in the whole of its life, and who, when you finally come out of it, are kind of given a red card and told, well, you can bugger off now because we don't need you because the doctor and his 2 daughters can afford to pay 30 quid a match and they're coming on Saturday. And so you get these people excluded, and you also get, particularly with the development of all seating, cheek by jowl, as it were, people whose expectations of football are very different. And you get these kind of new frictions and new difficulties where the old system of self-sorting is no longer allowed somehow.
And then they were in like a Man United end, and they said it didn't matter at the time, you know, but they all decked out in claret and colour. And then they pushed their way forward to the front. And some Man United geezer said, you ain't going no further. And the old man said, I am, and pushed forward. And the geezer threw a punch at him, and he ducked, and the punch hit my uncle on the jaw. Knocked him sparko, knocked him unconscious for the rest of the game.
No.
And he said there was lots of trouble during that game.
Well, the 3 of us still go away regularly, don't we? You look at the away games and everybody's in
It's all the
30 to 45 age
Yes.
group. They're the same people.
Same
that have been
people.
for 20
Same
years.
people still go away. Like, if you go away to a game, you still get the same faces. If you go to Man United, they're in the paddock, or they used to be in the paddock, and there's 10,000 of them behind the goal. And you know that you feel almost sorry for them because they're the ones who still go, and all the others, they're almost like swamped by them, aren't they?
To support an English club during the 70s and 80s was to be part of a fan culture, a culture often tinged with violence, but also a culture based on friendship and an emotional attachment to parts of football grounds now lost to all-seater stadia.
The most vociferous and opinionated of supporters would place themselves in the chicken run. It was almost like kind of football supporters' huge open forum, because you're so close to the pitch that when players were anywhere near the chicken run, it was very, very easy for them to hear exactly what people were saying. It was kind of like a sacred heartbeat, and to be allowed to go onto the chicken run, you had to have that kind of mentality yourself. You had to be of firm opinions. You had to be opinionated. My first experiences of West Ham were at the North Bank, up to the age of about 10 or 12. And then a lot of people at the time would switch to the South Bank, and it gives you a kind of sense of belonging that I don't really think it exists in seating areas anymore. There's certainly not the same passion.
The club is my life, at the end of the day. You know, I live and breathe West Ham. Well, inside here, we've got some teddy bears and there's some scarves, there's all different photographs of different players. With rings, I've just had another couple done, one of Bobby Moore and one of Jeff Hurst. I've got to get another one done of Martin Peters. As far as West Ham fans, we won the World Cup in 1966. You know, Bobby Moore made the goals and Jeff Hurst and Martin Peters scored all the goals. Come on, Irons.
Photographer Steve Bacon knows as much as anyone about how much West Ham have changed over the past decade. He is the club photographer and also works for the Newham Recorder, a newspaper which owes its existence to West Ham Football Club.
Usually come down on a Friday to have a chat, have a bit of lunch, talk to people, find out what's going on, bring the newspapers down. As far as the Recorder is concerned, there's a very great link between West Ham and the Newham Recorder. When West Ham got to Wembley in 1964 in the FA Cup final, they decided to bring out a special edition in East Ham, and really out of that West Ham coverage the Newham Recorder developed. That's why the Newham Recorder is very much behind West Ham in all they do and cover the club, well, you know, very, very fully.
The Newham Recorder has just printed a glowing article on West Ham's £35 million stadium development plan, recently approved by the club board.
We've now got plans to redevelop the stadium to make a 40,000 all-seater stadium. When that's been achieved, then that will put us in the top bracket.
They're going to extend the two ends, the Bobby Moore stand and the Centenary stand. I believe it's 15 metres. Everything's coming over 15 metres, so these stands will be extended. The pitch will be moved over. The new stand built, which will come back about halfway down the current forecourt. Everything's moving this way. The bigger crowds, hopefully, more revenue for the club. A stadium which I believe West Ham would like to be considered for the 2006 World Cup.
The stadium redevelopment will give the club the necessary infrastructure to stay in the top half of the Premier League. The plans are impressive. The stadium will have new restaurants, hospitality suites, a community leisure centre, even a hotel. But £35 million represents a huge investment for West Ham.
I would hope that they have all the finances in place already, rather than relying on success over the next 2 years, being able to pay for that work to be done. I would imagine that they're also thinking that in a worst-case scenario, West Ham could sell 2 of their present squad members and they would make the £35 million that is required for them to build the ground. And considering that 2 or 3 of those players are homegrown players who have come through the ranks at West Ham, then obviously it's pure profit.
This view may seem cynical, but it does raise an important point, that the most valuable asset of a medium-sized club like West Ham are its homegrown players. West Ham has invested heavily in their youth system with stunning success. They now have 4 young players who are being tipped to play for England. Youth team coach Tony Carr knows how important young players are.
Well, I mean, it's the lifeblood of the club. It always has been, and it's more important today than it's ever been. And it's vital that we produce, you know, young players for our first team ourselves, rather than dip into the transfer market. We haven't got that sort of finance to sort of buy the team as such. You know, it's got to be a mixture of buys and homegrown players. I think if we bring the top class players in, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think we've got to be careful we don't flood the market with them, you know, at the expense of young players from our own country.
It is mainly because of these talented homegrown players that West Ham have maintained their position in the top half of the English Premiership.
We've been very lucky in the last couple of years that we've produced Frank Lampard, Rio Ferdinand, Joe Cole. You know, not only they're fantastic players to have in the football team, and also they've got great value on the transfer market. Not that we would ever want to sell them, but they really are top-class players. And obviously Michael Carrick and 1 or 2 of the other kids out at youth team last year, the next little group that are going to break through. So we feel that it's vitally important. I mean, how do you put a value on players like Rio, Frank and Joe?
Young players like Michael Carrick benefit from the family atmosphere at the club.
So it's nice to see some of our
first-year trainees, our scholars that are training with the, or getting themselves fit with the likes of Stuart Pearce, Gary Charles, etc. So, and a lot of the players will work together, whether they're a 17-year-old or one of the established international players.
Many of the younger players live in a house owned by the club. Michael Carrick and Australian Richard Garcia have both benefited from living there.
The house really caters for boys that live a distance away, that can't live at home. So one, it may be an overseas player, or two, it could be a boy from the north of England. The boys are not only being looked after from the football point of view, but you know, they've got their own second mum and dad in the house that give them all the care and attention I think their own parents would do.
The careful grooming of these talented young players is giving them a chance to reach the very top of English football.
The proof of the pudding will be in the eating. I mean, it's easy to say they could come through, but it's a little bit more difficult for them to actually make that next step. You know, the lads like Joe Cole, it seems inevitable that he'll come through and play for England. But West Ham are showing people that it works because their team is succeeding as well. They've won the Youth Cup quite convincingly in the final on a big aggregate. So results would say that they're ahead of the game at the moment.
That young player, particularly the ones like a Michael Carrick that hopefully are going on to greater things, the financial rewards are much, much greater, that's undoubted. Opportunities of abroad or whatever, yes, I mean, life for a young footballer now is obviously very attractive.
We certainly see football stars as the new rock and roll stars. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And the fact is that football stars, although they might be earning huge sums of money, they're still, I think, far more approachable than film stars, pop stars, etc. You know, you only have to go to the training ground, you only have to be outside the stadium on a match day when the players arrive, and they have time for their fans, and they don't mind signing autographs or what have you. And I think that's important.
As they walked past, I just went, "Can you sign the ball?" And they went, "Yeah, do you want it to a name or just our signature?" So it was quite friendly, but that was them three. We're just going to hope the rest of them all right as well. We like DeCanio at the moment because of his penalties. They were very good. We think he's good. Well, he does that little slow thing. Not a big fan. I don't go to matches. It's too cold for me to stand outside. I like to watch it indoors.
We've got a man over here. It's Keegan just inside.
England manager Kevin Keegan was a Liverpool player during the 1970s. He knows very well how different life is now for young players.
It's changed beyond all recognition from when I started, but then so has life. You know, we started off in an apprentice scheme. Every club was allowed a maximum of 8. I mean, Scunthorpe United, for example, where I started, we only had 4. We used to do all sorts of jobs, you know, like cleaning the boots, cleaning the toilets, cleaning the baths. Now, because of the way the academies are, every club starts to pick up the kids who show signs of having a chance to be professional footballers. So suddenly when they get to under 16 level and they're playing for England, you're getting this trend now. They're coming through the under 18s, then under 21s, big name clubs buying them or having them already on the books, and then playing for England. And there's very few, although there's still 1 or 2, thank goodness, who can come from, if you like, book the trend and sort of not have come through all the academies or been turned down at a few academies and had to get a job. That's going to happen less and less because clubs are becoming more professional now, and you know, they're casting the nets wider, and very few of the fish are slipping through the nets.
I'll give my missus a fixture list, and everything else, it goes out the window, really. Our whole social calendar is built around those days. It does cause friction at times, but at the end of the day, she belongs in another universe. We had to go to a wedding. Well, I would have none of it. She went to the wedding and I followed on the reception. I just got me gear and went to football that day with me tuxedo under a massive coat. I just didn't want anyone to see me, really. I don't want to look like a plumber or anything, you know. And she had a real scream up, you know. But I made the reception in the end, but she never spoke to me for 2 weeks. So between West Ham or my missus, it would be West Ham. She knows where she gets her coat, knows where the door is. That's it.
West Ham may be ahead of the game on youth development, but in stadium development they are still 2 years behind a club like Sunderland with their futuristic Stadium of Light. And they're not in the same commercial universe as the richest club in the world, European champions Manchester United. Manchester United's value on the stock market recently passed the £1 billion mark, and this owes much to a global fan base which West Ham cannot hope to match.
We just ran a promotion in Thailand with Pepsi, one of our commercial partners, to bring people to this ground to watch a game. 30 people won a chance to come here. We had 10 million entries for a presentation by Pepsi. It's the biggest consumer promotion ever in that country. 1 in 5 of the population decided to try and enter that thing. Now that's a pretty powerful understanding of people's interest in the club. What we're trying to do with our commercial development is actually feed that enthusiasm and give the customer what they want. This is not exploitation, because unlike the 30 who came from Thailand, not everybody out of that 10 million are ever going to be able to come here and watch the game, but they do want to be able to read about us, see us, touch and feel us in a way that, you know, perhaps they're never going to be able to experience, other than if we take a bit of the mountain to Mohammed, really.
The world clubs, as we're going to have to call them, who take part in the world stage, have to walk a tightrope, and the tightrope has on one side localism and on the other side globalism. And for Manchester United, localism means the UK, and globalism means outside of the UK.
Television is the key to the global expansion of the game. But some believe there is a danger of oversaturation that clubs and television companies will eventually have to address.
The game has developed both in the amount of coverage on television and also the standard of coverage on television. Each weekend there are 4 games that go out live. They go to 35 to 40 broadcast territories. That is probably over 100 countries. The total audience, well, it could be well into billions. There's, you know, the potential reach is enormous, and nobody's actually done the figure. Soccer on television is there virtually live every day of the week, near enough, in some form or another, whether it be Premiership games, nationwide games, European games, World Club Championship games, whatever it may be. There's matches all the time, and I would suspect that saturation point on television, soccer on television, will mean that if there are that many games being shown, that stadiums will start to become emptier. I mean, it seems to be the natural way that things will happen. If that's the case, it would make sense for the clubs to reduce ticket prices to get more people in, to even give away tickets, because there's unquestionably, it's better to have a crowd in a stadium, not only for the players, for the other fans that are there, but also for television.
My only contact with football is watching the telly. It's not my fault. I have been forced in front of my television set, and that has become my contact with football, apart from the telephone.
For every one person who goes, there's probably 20 people who ain't going, watching it on the box, buying the merchandise, and the club will treat them as equal a supporter as they will the person who goes. And in fact, they'll probably try and encourage the person who's doing that to go in place of the person who's really going, because they've got the more buns.
Really gets my goal. Yeah, there's lots of...
The injection of television money has changed football in England, most notably by encouraging an influx of top foreign players attracted by lucrative contracts and the passion of the English game. Igor Stimac is one such player.
England is mother of football, and I appreciate that you always keep your style, you never change, and that's something special. I used to play in Spain for 2 years, I played a couple of games in Italy, and it's nothing to compare to this here.
I think people like Vieira, Petit, Arsenal, Bergkamp certainly. I think people like Ginola, you know, if he's attracted another 5,000 women to watch football and another 500 kids to want to improve the skills, then it was worth Ginola coming to England.
Foreign fans go to extraordinary lengths to follow the English game. These Maltese fans have come to West Ham's training ground to meet the team and manager Harry Redknapp.
When's your winter come in?
What's the best time for you to come over?
It's when we get a break, really.
May is a good time.
Yeah, end of season. The only problem end of season sometimes is I'd like to have a break during the season sometime, you know? It's like we've got a break next week. Unfortunately, we've got a break next week. For 2 weeks' time, you know? But I mean...
In Malta, we are divided. Half support the British and half the Italians. And like if Italy win, the English people who support, they stay at home, they don't go out, you know? But when England win, we all go out on the Italian stadium.
And we sort something out, you know, the lads come over, accommodation or anything, we'll sort it all out for you, yeah?
Yeah, good. Thanks for coming, fellas. See you later on.
See you later.
Now there's a bit of space for Lampard. Chipped it again towards Brooking, and it's there! Brooking has done it!
What I like most here is you feel you are a member of this big family. Here I feel like being at home. In Manchester, if you're a Manchester United supporter, you're number 225,608 and you are a nobody. This is special here. I support West Ham since 23 years, and the reason why I support West Ham is for the first time when I came here during my time in college. That was back in 1976. I had a chance to see West Ham against Eintracht Frankfurt in the European Cup semi-final here at Upton Park. And it was in the old days where the crowd was bigger, and but this atmosphere here, it was just unbelievable. Compared to Austria, we had only 6,000–7,000 people in average gates, and here it was 38,000 to 40,000. It was unbelievable. And it was good to beat the Germans, of course.
Taylor, Brooking, beautiful timing. Still Brooking, yes, number 3, magnificent.
But there is only one place that West Ham can really compete with Manchester United, on the pitch, and their fixture against the Reds is always sold out.
From a supporter's point of view, Manchester United, you know, that they won the treble last season. They've recently been crowned World Club champions. No one is better than Manchester United. So obviously when a team like West Ham can come and tweak Manchester United's nose and get a good result against them, it's a huge boost for the supporters because, you know, you can go home for the weekend and feel very, very happy with what your team has done.
Well, that's the home leg.
It is, yeah.
And could you tell me, have you had any returns for the Manchester United game on Sunday?
I'm afraid we haven't, no.
No, nothing at all available for that?
Sorry,
all right,
mate.
thanks for your help.
Cheers,
mate.
It was April '91, it was semi-final in the FA Cup against Nottingham Forest. I went up by coach and started the day sort of from about 7 o'clock in the morning when we left here, really. And it was the biggest game I'd ever been to. Tony Gale got sent off, and when Keith Hackett showed him the red card, fans got behind the team, even though we knew we wouldn't win, and just sung Billy Bondi's Claret and Blue Army for 45 minutes solid, and we ended up losing 4-0. I don't think that there could be a better day than that, because everyone just stuck together. We met a lot of new friends that day, people that I still see now, all because of that game, and we were just all singing and joking about, you know. Even though we lost, we were still on a high from the day itself.
Hello? Yeah, hello, Del. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, mate. No, nothing at all. I've been down to the club to see if there's anything returned. Nothing returned, and doesn't look like you're going to be in luck, I'm afraid. So, very sorry about that, mate. Yeah. All right. I'll see you soon. Cheers, Del. Bye-bye.
This is 95.8 Capital FM, London.
West Ham get the worst possible news ahead of today's clash with Man United. They could be thrown out of the Worthington Cup for fielding an ineligible player.
The line between success and failure is a thin one in football. Having reached the semi-final of the Worthington Cup, West Ham are in danger of being disqualified for fielding a player who'd already played in the competition for another club. It is an administrative error that could cost the club millions of pounds. News of this possible disqualification from the Cup competition, so close to the final, casts a shadow over Upton Park. West Ham have reached only 6 Wembley finals in their 100-year history. Aside from the prestige of winning the Worthington Cup, success would also bring the club a lucrative place in European competition. The blunder creates tension amongst the fans. Their reaction is another indication of how close they feel to the club. This is a family squabble.
I was saying, after the Stimac incident in the UEFA Cup earlier in the year, you think it should be somebody's designated responsibility that something like that doesn't happen again.
Today's programme, I think, is unbelievable. It needs so many questions to be answered. Is it the secretary? Is it the boy himself? I mean, he knew that he played for the other club twice. Did he not mention it to the manager? Everyone here at West Ham has got something to answer to the fans, because we're absolutely fed up with some of the things that happen here. And this must be the very worst. It's unbelievable. And I think you can ask any fan and we all feel exactly the same. Somebody's got to answer these questions.
Yet despite their anguish, the fans continue to flock to the ground. Manchester United are the biggest club in the world, and the West Ham team need the fans' support. At times, their loyalty seems unconditional.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Oh, mate. Take care. See you later.
The match is beamed out live to over 30 countries. It is West Ham's biggest game of the season, and even though the team go 2-0 down after 10 minutes, the feeling of exclusion still hurts fans like Del Francois.
Who'll be away for 5 or 6 weeks in the early part of the new millennium for the African Nations Tournament. Low match drills.
You never stop being a West Ham fan. Even though we don't physically go to the games anymore, you know, we don't class ourselves as supporters anymore, but we are West Ham fans. Supporters are people that go all the time. We don't go all the time now, and so we are now West Ham fans. It's about choosing your words.
Lucky block away from Ruddock, and a long range shot has gone in, and West Ham United are falling apart. Ryan Giggs gets his second.
They are so lucky. They should never ever take their fan base for granted, because they don't know what they've got. That club just doesn't know what it's got, because it's brilliant supporters, brilliant.
West Ham lose the match 4-2. But after the game, the questions to manager Harry Redknapp are all about the team's threatened expulsion from the Worthington Cup. He is a man who cares deeply about his club. He reminds us that football, for all its changes, is still about emotion.
I mean, it's not been an easy day today. Believe you me, it ain't been an easy day. It was difficult for myself to let myself driving in here today. You know, yesterday afternoon is like, I'm driving home, I'm looking forward to today's game. Got a cup semi-final to look forward to. I was suddenly, like, my world's caved in here, you know, when I hear this. I've got to drive in here this morning and pick myself up and try to pick players up who are all walking in. What's happened, you know? I just want to go into a semi-final and have a chance of taking the club to Wembley, which is what the punters want, because they're the most important people. Unfortunately, things got cocked up somewhere and we've jeopardised that chance, but I still think if the people are fair, that, you know, there's no way on earth that we will be kicked out of the competition. Anyone who thinks that, anyone who believes that is completely wrong. I'm telling you now, there's not a chance. They obviously got overlooked. Part in the competition. But I don't know. I don't know what the answer's going to be. We'll wait and see.
If you're only a fan, you know, you are going to feel very upset about it. You're going to be talking about it and everything else. But with us, it's a job as well. You know, we have to come in and we have to be positive again.
Football is now one of the UK's most successful industries, but there is still some doubt as to how it will develop in the new century. The game stands at a threshold, and if it loses all touch with its roots, it may not be able to return to them if it needs to in the future.
I think in this country at the moment, football's on a massive high, and you know, as far as I'm concerned, long may that continue. That mustn't mean that we don't stop trying to improve it, though.